Welcome to the Body Bag Podcast. I'm your host, Broke Rider Dave, and with me always, Chris Thomas.
It's good, everybody.
How are you doing today?
Well, I believe I texted you about 10 minutes ago and said I have words today.
And
Yeah.
it being a beautiful summer night out here in Indiana, it's only fitting that we are doing the movie of Summer of '84 today.
I have a funny story about that before we get into that. I know we have a little bit of something going on before that, but
Yeah,
yeah, very appropriate. We're just getting into like the summer season, so
yeah,
what better way to kick off with a bit of suburban horror?
exactly. But before that, we gave each other some homework assignments on the last movie review. We're gonna touch on those and then
Yeah.
get some new assignments. So.
Yes, we're all, we came to a realization. Well, I did that. I think it all started with the fact that I had never seen The Exorcist,
Yeah.
and it was like, "How have you never seen The Exorcist?" And that was my homework. So we decided, all right, well, we got to give each other homework assignments so that we can constantly be expanding our repertoire.
Yeah.
I feel that got so many likes when I posted that I was watching it. 'Cause I just feel like I was living a lie. I can't host a horror podcast and not have seen one of the big ones.
One of the horror classics, yeah.
So, my homework assignment was that I had to watch The Exorcist, and yours was The Intruder.
Yes.
Two.
And I have words about that one.
You have words about that? Oh, yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, since you have words, why don't you go ahead? The Exorcist is the more well-known one. So, tell me what you thought of Intruders, and just give your little mini review.
Yeah, so I gave Chris a absolute horror classic. He gives me a piece of garbage slasher camp movie.
You thought it was garbage?
Dialogue
Oh,
trash.
yeah, well, yes, the dialogue.
Setting
Yes, the dialogue.
awful.
The dialogue was.
Acting not great.
You need to look at my
Sam
review.
Raimi, stick to directing my guy.
You need to. Well, that was a Sam Raimi movie.
He was acting in it, he didn't direct it.
You need to look at my Shutter shout out for that one, because can you at least admit that the prosthetics on a lot of some of the kills were pretty good though?
Yeah, I figured that's why you gave it to me because there's a lot of practical effects. But
Now, yes, I will admit that the dialogue was pretty bad.
the story was pretty terrible. Like,
Yes,
I
when you find out who the killer is, it was a very lame reveal. It was.
I
Very
picked
much
out the
so.
killer in like the first 15 minutes of the movie. Once it,
I mean, it's from the '80s, so
yeah,
you can spoil who it was.
yeah, it was like the half owner of the store because the store's getting sold. That's why he was killing people. I'm like,
Just for no reason.
and they had this very awful, like super abusive ex boyfriend as like the red herring slash
Yeah, for no
hero
reason.
you're supposed to root for at the end. Like, yeah, no, I don't like that guy either. I
Did,
wish he would have died.
did you spot Did you spot old Bruce Campbell?
No, was he in it?
He was the one of the police officers at the end. There were like
You're
two.
right, he was. Yeah,
Yeah,
I realized that. I'm like, oh, of course, Bruce Campbell's in this movie, but
because it's because Sam Raimi was part of it.
yeah, like I said, Sam Raimi should stick to directing. Acting isn't his thing.
If I'm not mistaken, since it has been quite a bit since I've seen it. Again, I think I said this is 1989 when this came out.
Yeah,
I'm trying to see who. Yeah, Scott Spiegel is the guy who directed it. Yeah, Sam Raimi was Randy,
of course, they have a guy named Randy.
and I don't remember hating it. I remember. Again, I think I might have just gotten. Again, I think I might have just gotten won over by some of the prosthetics that were used because
Yeah,
there were some
I think
actual
it's one of
kills.
those movies you have to watch in a group.
Yes, that is
Watching it by yourself, you're just like, this is fucking stupid.
that movie is definitely a good group movie. It's one that
Yeah.
you can make fun of as a group. It's got about a 50% on the old tomato meter,
Yeah, Urban Legend has like an 8.
and I might have to go back and rewatch it because again, that I think I reviewed it during my 31 Days of Horror for Halloween.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, I must have watched a couple of bad ones because I was just kind of on a Shudder binge for a while,
Yeah.
and there's a
But
lot of bad horror, and I think that one came up, and it was probably one of those situations where I watched and I was like, all right, this wasn't as bad as some of the ones I've been watching.
But yeah, I'm not a fan.
Well, don't worry. I have some homework for you that you'll have a better time with this go
All
around.
right.
But all right, so how about you break it down, given your scale? Then how would you have broken it down in your scale?
On my scale, okay, so what is it?
You got technical, stories, and enjoyment.
Okay, so technicals, like the practical effects are pretty good. It's an '80s movie, so for the range it was in, I'd probably just give it about a 6.
There was a couple of beginning shots where the camera was placed in kind of weird spots.
Yeah,
Just it kind of felt like it was trying to be artsy a little bit.
yeah,
But okay, so you said about a 6 for the effects.
Yeah.
Brought it up probably from a 4 to a 6, I imagine.
yeah. And then story, I'd probably give it a 3.
Yeah, the movie wasn't, or the story really wasn't anything special. I mean, it was a slasher in a grocery store.
Yeah. And then enjoyment, it's probably like a 2, so 11 out of 30.
Wow. So that means you rank it on par with enjoyment. You rank it on par with movies like Black Christmas or Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Well, you liked Hanukkah a little bit more than I did, but
Yeah, but I just didn't enjoy this movie. Maybe it just caught me on a bad day, but no, this movie was not for me.
it must have caught me on a generous day then, because I don't remember hating it.
Yeah.
I'll
No,
have to-
I vocally said out loud one time while I watched this, like, why the fuck is Chris making me watch this shit?
Why?
Said it to nobody, but
Well, because you now have that in your movie repertoire. They're not all going to be good, but you have to know these movies.
yeah, Intruders was really the hole in my cinematic
It's like,
vocabulary. Yeah.
But don't you feel like you're a better person now, having gone through it?
No.
It's like you have to take some of the good with the bad.
Yeah. All right. So yours was The Exorcist.
All right, so I have like a little bit of notes here for The Exorcist. So I have to kind of give a little bit of caveats for this, or a little bit of like a pre-review couple of statements.
All right.
Now, going into this, possession movies or ghost movies are not usually my cup of tea. They're I don't know. It's just I mean, we all have our tastes, and
Yeah.
possession ones are just never usually my thing. And I also had to go into this already kind of knowing what the big scenes were,
Yeah.
just because this movie is such in the zeitgeist of movies that are known that it's only natural that I have seen the big scenes.
You've seen the highlights, yeah.
Yes, I've seen the head twisting scene. I've seen the vomit on the pre-scene. You know, most of the demon Pazuzu scenes.
Yeah.
So going into that kind of put me at a little bit of a disadvantage, because when you go into a movie, having everybody said how great this is and how it's the best of the best, you're going to be expecting right off the bat the best of the best.
Yeah, so it definitely kind of has that pedestal it's on, so.
Yeah, so going into that, you know, if any criticisms that I have probably aren't really the movie's fault. It's more of like, well, it's on such a high pedestal that you're like expecting God's gift to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so now again, much like The Intruder, good old practical effects, so I'm already gonna like
Yeah.
it. You know, you have practical effects, good makeup. And before going any further, I will say this: I have to give Linda Blair her flowers.
Yes.
I gotta give her her flowers when there is a reason why she is put up there in a list of good child actors when it comes to horror, because
Yeah.
she was acting her ass off.
Exactly.
So I watched it in 2 parts because it's a 2-hour and a little bit of change
And
movie.
it's really long, yeah.
So I watched the first half one night and then picked it up the next night. I will admit, the first half I was like, man, I'm a little bored.
It does have that slow burn to it.
I was like, this is a little, but at the same time, I was like, all right, again, maybe I'm expecting too much, you know, but then again, I know that this has to set the scene. I will say I did not expect it to open up in Iraq.
Yeah.
When it opened up in Iraq, I was like, I don't think I put on the right movie.
Let me check.
like-
Did I watch the right one? Yeah.
I was like, did they remake this, or is this a sequel or something, or did I type in a movie called The Exorcism or something?
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, all right. And then I checked. I was like, all right, all right. So the first half was a little bit boring, and I was sitting there like, all right, man, this, maybe the '70s was that people were just scared more easily back in the '70s. But once the priest meets Reagan and meets the demon, I got fully invested. That's what I was here for. That is, and most of it, what I was digging, wasn't even the more outrageous scenes. Like, I have an issue with scenes where it was just like outrageous for outrageous, like the whole crucifix scene or the lick me scene.
Yeah.
I think that was a little bit just trying to be outrageous for the sake of being outrageous, because it's outrageous because it's a little kid that this is all being done with, which doesn't
Makes it a little bit tougher,
which doesn't really like appeal to me, really. No. Not saying I was like uncomfortable. I was just like, meh. What I loved was the conversations with the priest and the demon. The dialogue between him and the demon, just their little back and forths. I'm a sucker for dialogue and
good
stuff
dialogue,
like that.
yeah.
For good dialogue, so I really dug that. And I will admit, at one point I had to get up and use the bathroom. I had the ambiance. It was a completely dark room, and that I went to go use the bathroom. I was like, all right, I'm feeling a little uneasy, but I mean, I wasn't scared, but I was just like,
Yeah.
Also, one of the things of the '70s is that movies just end very abruptly.
Yeah, that's
I forgot that. I forgot the one that we watched where it just ended abruptly. But I wrote some notes as I was doing this. I said that some of these people kind of annoyed me more than Pazuzu did. Just the doctors.
Yeah.
It's a movie called The Exorcist, so we have to spend half the movie of them going, well, we don't really believe you saw what you saw.
Yeah.
Or there has to be some kind of logical explanation for all this. So that's kind of like a trope in movies where it's like, I get it, and in the real world, you wouldn't really believe her anyway, so.
Exactly.
Now, highlight of the movie for me, I laughed my ass off when after the priest died, the old priest died, and Dimitri is the guy's kid, the other priest. What was his name? I just kept thinking of what his mom kept calling him as Dimi, but the younger priest. I laughed my ass off when he beat the shit out of Pazuzu when he was just punching like Reagan, but he's beating up the. I don't know why. It just made me laugh. Unfortunately, I knew how it ended, so I knew that the priest was going to take in the demon and then kill himself. But having said all that, the scene of the actual exorcism itself was a pretty, suspenseful scene. So yeah, I mean, so going into this, if I had to rank it for me, and this is all personal, story, I have to put myself in the time period as well as everything. I'm going to give the story an 8 because there were a couple of scenes that I thought didn't really add much to it. It was a 2-hour-plus movie. I think you could have cut a couple of those scenes, and you wouldn't have really missed much. Like that drunk dude at the party. I don't think that really added anything. I thought I was just like, oh, it's just some drunk dude at a party. Like there was just a couple of scenes that I just didn't think really added much. But 8, I mean, it wasn't hard to follow.
Yeah.
So enjoyment. I'm going to say enjoyment. I'm going to give it about a 7 because I was bored in the first half, but once the second half kicked in, I was really invested.
Yeah.
So 7. I keep comparing this with The Omen, which I think I might enjoy The Omen a little bit more.
Yeah, I think they came out around the same time, didn't they?
I have to look at it. I'm sure they were both in the 70s, but I have to. I had seen The Omen for the first time a couple of years ago, and was that enjoyment? Oh no, story. Oh, and technicals. Technically, it was fine. It was perfectly fine. Like I said, I'm a sucker for practical effects. You got that classical score, or not classical, but that classic piano score, which sets the mood very nicely. So I'm gonna give that one about a 7 as well. So I'd say 7, 7, 8.
It's 22 out of 30.
So it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I would watch it again, but only if I catch it in the second half.
Yeah. So The Exorcist came out in 73. The Omen came out in 76.
And I still think that I prefer The Omen just a little bit more. But that's just personal preference.
I mean, I haven't watched The Omen since I was a teenager, so I'd probably have to watch it again. But I think I might prefer The Exorcist more.
Mm-hmm. I do
Yeah.
believe that it is adequately rated, like overrated, underrated, or adequately rated. I think it is rated exactly how it needs to be, and like it deserves the popularity that it has.
Yeah.
For a movie in which that's not usually my genre anyway, I still enjoyed myself. Like I said, more so in the second half.
All right. So, what movie are you assigning me now?
So I have a couple here, but I was debating if I wanted you to pick one out of three, or if I should just give you whatever I feel here. Actually, here's a good one, and I just watched it for the first time last year as a recommendation. Have you watched Lake Mungo?
I have not. No.
All right, so that'll be your homework assignment. Lake Mungo. Janine Pipe, if I'm not mistaken, really likes. I've seen her Insta, and I think she
Yeah.
talked about it with some people over on her page. But
Okay.
good movie. That's a. I won't go. I think it's all of these that I'm going to give you. I think are on Shutter,
All right.
so that should be on Shutter. So Lake Mungo, and what's mine?
All right. So you are gonna watch the first found footage Korean movie, Gongjeom Haunted Asylum. Came out in 2018.
So
I
it's
believe
called.
it is also on Shutter. Yeah.
You said it's called Haunted Asylum.
Yeah. Gongjeom Haunted Asylum.
Gongjim Haunted Asylum.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit shorter than Lexus. This one's only about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be two. I wasn't expecting to be 2 hours and some change, and then when it opened up in Iraq, I was like, "How are we going to get from Iraq all the way
You're-
to Reagan's bedroom?"
Yeah, you're in for a ride at that point.
So I guess it's safe to say that I probably had a better time with my homework than you did.
Probably, yeah.
I gave you trigonometry homework, and you gave me like, and you gave me basically, I don't know, history.
Yeah.
Which I can breeze through history, but you know,
Exactly.
don't worry. This one's more. I gave you more social studies, so this will
Yeah.
be a little bit easier.
I gave you some foreign studies this time.
All right. So now that little bit of stuff out of his way, how about we get into your pick for this episode?
Summer of '84.
Funny story. My dumb ass when I was watching it at the beginning before I looked,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Wow, this looks really good for a movie that came out in the '80s." It wasn't until later that I was like, "Oh, this came out in like 2018."
Yeah.
I don't know why. Summer of '84 it sounded familiar, like it. Well, maybe it sounded familiar because it only came out a couple of years ago, but it
Yeah.
sounded like a classic, like '80s movie.
Well, in the '80s, I think Summer of Sam came out in the '80s, which is based on the New York shooting from the '70s.
But you know, I still don't mind anyway because I love the '80s as a setting, and apparently so does everybody else because it's been getting thrown back to as of late.
Well, I think it has that nostalgic feel where it hits us at the perfect time because even though we're '90s kids, but we still have similar memories from playing outside during the summer as kids.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's what '90s is great because it
Yeah.
basically '90s is '80s light.
Yeah,
We still got to enjoy a lot of the stuff that happened in the '80s that was popular in the '80s.
yeah. Finding your friends by finding out whose house all the bikes are in front of. Yeah,
Oh yeah, you know,
Yeah.
back '90s and up into the 2000s, you know, we would
Yeah.
just go out and then be back home once the street lights came on.
came on.
You know,
Yeah,
and then it was back in an era where we would leave and our parents would not see us for a good chunk of the day until we got back home at night.
exactly. They were good times.
And I love suburban horror. I love suburbia as a setting for
Yeah.
horror. You know, you got movies like Blue Velvet. Makes me think of this movie kind of made me think of The Goonies a little bit. It also made me think of the movie The Burbs.
Yeah, like the whole setting, like
Yeah.
evil could be anywhere, even next door to you. Yeah,
Now we're doing our reviews different this season. Instead of going point by point, these are just going to be spoiler-filled talks, and we
Yeah.
talk about why they are our movie picks, because this being the season of personal favorites.
yeah. So a very quick summary of this movie is teenage boys start going missing from like neighboring towns, and this kid suspects the cop that lives next door to him to be the murderer, and they go on this whole thing to try to figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's very much the story is very very familiar. It's
Yes.
a bunch of kids taking it upon themselves to try to uncover this kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like Lost Boys, but without the vampires.
Yeah,
You know?
it's just kids, before the time there were cell phones or laptops or really video games. Kids looking for a summer adventure, basically.
Yeah. So you said that you were worried I was either going to love this or hate this, and
Because it's a kid-centric movie, yeah.
Now, I will say this. The kids grew on me. The kids grew on me because at first, it kind of... Usually I'd call out dialogue that these kids are saying, but I kind of feel like it's part of the charm with this kind of genre of movie.
Yeah.
Because, it's a lot... It feels like a lot of very forced vulgarity, forced cursing, but maybe that's just because I forgot how much I probably did the same thing when I was that age.
Yeah, you gotta think, these are kids, I think they're going into, like, their freshman year of high school.
They're like 15.
Yeah, so they're just, like, hitting that puberty stage where all their hormones are going crazy.
And where cursing is cool.
Yeah.
I do remember what I was like back then, and yes, cursing was very cool to me, as a teenager, and it was like just what you did, and maybe it's just because I'm older, it just seemed whatever, but I let it pass just because I was like, I was probably the exact same way. But as a unit, I did like the kids. I did like the kids as friends. I mean, they
worked well together, yeah.
Yes. And this movie also had a couple of things that I was like, you know what, kudos, because it would have, for instance, in a group like this, inevitably there's usually a rival bully group.
Yeah.
There was none of that.
No.
There was no rival
in the neighborhood, yeah.
I was sitting here waiting for, while they're like out and about and stuff like that. In fact, all the kids seem to kind of be cool and hang out with each other at night. Like
they all play a game together, yeah.
Yeah, they all played Manhunt. It's like all the kids kind of like, there's no like bullies or anything like that, which I was like, thank you. Yeah. I was like any other movie. I was sitting here waiting for like, all right, where's the Letterman jacket wearing douche nozzles from the other side of town? Like, and I thought that Nikki was the girl Nikki.
Yeah,
who's the kind of love interest, the one who all the kids are kind of swooning over.
Yeah, she's like the senior girl.
She actually turned out to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought that she was, they could have easily written her especially when she found out that, like they were like, it's like she kind of knows that like the local boys have the hots for her.
Yeah.
But she was super cool. At one instance, when she befriends our protagonist, they
were always friends because she used to babysit him.
Yes. Well, she befriends him a little bit more because, she lives across the street, but then they start kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
So they know each other, but at this point more on a more friendly basis. That she kind of like helps all the other dudes are like teasing him like, oh, she really came over to your house and blah, blah, blah. And then she came and said, oh, well, he's more of a man than you guys are. And I was like, that's a cool
so
girl.
Nice, yeah.
I was like, that's really sweet of her. She like had his back.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
helping him out. Yeah.
Helping him out, and it didn't go any further than that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was said, and then that kind of moved on.
Yeah.
So certain scenes like that, I thought it was done well. These kids were not at all as annoying as some other kids I've seen in horror movies.
Yeah, I think this movie, for the budget, because I don't think it was that high budget, it was shot really well.
Oh, I did dig the music too. I dug the soundtrack to this thing. It didn't play like a ton of like. It was in the 80s, and aside from like a couple of like nods, like at one point they mentioned the Gremlins, which came out the same year. They were like, "Oh, I still need to see it," and blah blah. Yeah. It didn't have a whole lot of like forced like
80s,
forced 80s. It didn't have a whole lot of like just music from the 80s. It's a lot more kind of like synthy, suspenseful kind of music, which I really liked.
Yeah. The score in this movie is pretty well done.
Yeah,
and they balanced it well, not like overly forcing 80s tropes down our throats. So
now, having said a couple of those things, this movie also kind of dove into some stuff that annoys me in movies. When I say stuff that annoys me in movies, I'm inevitably going to find something that annoys me in a movie. And one of them is definitely the authority figures don't believe our main protagonists.
Yeah, but you gotta think about the point. Like, if your kid comes up like, "Hey, this cop we live next door to is murdering a bunch of kids,"
I know, and I understand,
and they had no proof. They're like, "You're going through his shit." Come on now.
I understand that, and and trust me, I know that it needs to happen in the movie, but just for me, when it came time and it's like, no, we're gonna have you go over there and apologize. I was like, man, all right, we have to sit through this. He's gonna have to apologize. It's gonna be, we're gonna pretend like everything is back to normal, but it's not really.
Yeah.
So it's it's not the only movie that does it.
Yeah.
But it was
I think it's better done than other movies.
Now,
because you could believe why the authority figures are like, that doesn't make sense what you're telling us.
Yes, I mean, and if I was the mom and dad too, I wouldn't believe them either.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was just like, all right, it was more of like when it happened, I was like, all right, we have to kind of go through this motions right now.
Hit this trope, yeah.
And now I will say this, and it's not the first and only movie to do this, but I really wish that we would have a horror movie with some competent police officers.
It would be nice, yeah.
It would be very nice. So I wrote some down, like, hey, a serial killer on the loose? We can't find him, but these 15-year-old kids could find it and produce video evidence.
Yeah.
And, okay, we know who the killer is. Well, let's not have cops at the residence where the boy found him. No need to have cops over there. And oh, should we, check the house, make sure the house is secured? Nah, it'll be fine. Just, let the kid fall asleep. And I don't think that they knew how to write Mackie. The main killer's name is Mackie in this, by the way. He ends up being the police. The kids are right, which if you've seen movies like this, you know that the kids are going to be right.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what are they going to find to what's going to be the big piece of evidence that, I don't think they knew how to write Mackie getting Big Boy Woody and our main protagonist into the cop car, because he just puts his hand over what's the kid's
chloroforms him.
I mean, but that kid's pretty big too. I mean, nothing against. I mean, the kid's not home by himself. He would have had to drag two kids out of the house without waking up mom or dad.
Yeah, I understand that part. You gotta have this suspense of disbelief there, but
I just don't think they knew how to write it because and nothing against the kid, but I mean, he was a pretty big boy.
Yeah.
He would have made some noise trying to get two kids into a car, stuff them in the back seat. He would have woken somebody up, especially. That's why I said the police aren't competent. You wouldn't have had anybody stationed outside the residence of the kid who found this killer.
Right? You would think that they would do that, or,
I mean, the guy wasn't the main kid. What's the main kid's name?
What is his name again?
I know Woody was the big boy. You had Faraday, who I think was the nerd.
Davy.
Yeah. And Davy's dad is a police officer.
No, his dad is a news reporter.
I knew he was involved with the police somehow. All right. But you would think he's a news reporter. He would probably know better than to leave the house. If I was the parent, I wouldn't have been getting any sleep that night.
Yeah.
They're sleeping very soundly for parents who just found out that their next door neighbor was a murderer and he is on the loose.
Right? Like, I wouldn't sleep until they caught him.
And somehow he made it into to Davy's house and up his attic.
Which I like that touch, because that's kind of like a play on an actual murder that happened in Iowa. The Villisca axe murders.
Mm-hmm. I think I might have heard of this. Is this where was that the person's MO, where they would wait until the people found asleep and then hack them up?
Well, he wasn't a serial killer. He just did it to a family of like 5 that had 2 kids sleeping over. Like, while they were at church or something, he went up into their attic, waited for them to come home, do all their evening activities, settle down, go to sleep, and then came out of the attic and murdered them.
I think I heard.
The worst part about that is he didn't use the sharp side of the axe.
Oh, he used the blunt side?
Yeah, he bludgeoned him to death with an axe.
Jeez.
Which is even
worse.
More vicious, yeah.
Now, let me...
check your attics, people.
Yeah, check your attics. All right, I've been kind of hijacking the talk just because it was new for me, but tell me why you picked this one and some scenes that you like. Tell me what you like about this movie, since this was your pick.
My favorite thing about this movie is Mackie undoubtedly wins. The antagonist wins in this movie. There's not a happy ending.
Yeah,
he kills Woody and then tells Tommy, like, I'm going to let you live, so you got to spend the rest of your life waiting for me to come back for you. And then just lets him go.
I will say that I did like that the ending was different that way.
Yeah.
Whereas like, because I was when the ending was when he was chasing them through the woods, I was like, all right, man, why are you toying with these kids like this? Like,
Yeah.
just kill them and be done with it. We all know, because in my mind, I'm like, you're gonna slip up, somebody's gonna find you, and you're gonna get killed, or something's gonna happen, you get caught because you're just sitting there playing with your victims like every fucking serial killer does for some reason.
Yeah.
But
Well,
no,
I mean, yeah, he was pretty pissed off because he was killing kids in this area for like 5 plus years, and now because of this one random teenager, he got caught and has to
get up and move.
move. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, that ending shocked me. I'm like, oh, they're actually gonna
Let him go or
Yeah.
let him live.
okay. I love that.
I did think that was a good ending because I was sitting there annoyed, like, okay, we know how this is gonna be. They're gonna find like at the last minute somebody's gonna show up and like kill him because he's gonna be monologuing, and then somebody's gonna come up with like a gun and get him. No, he terrifies. He kills Wood. He terrifies this kid, slashes his leg up, and he's still
He
out
cuts
there.
his Achilles and just lets him go. Yeah, and leaves.
Which kid was on his bike the very next like week. It looks like I don't think he would be able to with Achilles getting cut like that, but.
And I like the ending scene because you can tell that like he's no longer hanging out with like remaining friends either. It's just kind of like
They kind of drifted apart after it.
yeah,
Part of them, you probably think that part of their friends probably blamed him for Woody dying,
yeah,
for getting them involved in it in the first place.
exactly.
Because I was like, why do they seem like they're pissed off at him for? And I was like, well, probably because he got him involved in the first place.
Yeah, and he's marked for death. If Mackie comes back, they want to be with him. So
I mean, it wasn't really his fault because, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what's the alternative? He would have still been around. They might have been one of his next victims anyway.
yeah,
But at the same time, this is not a happy ending.
yeah.
It's-
I also like in the beginning when he's helping Mackie move something in the house. He looks at the pictures like, "Oh, you have a big family." He was like, "Yeah, none of them around here." And it turns out all the photos are photos of his victims.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice touch. Put like a little throwaway line in the beginning of the movie that actually comes around and means something.
I will say that the kid was smart, though, when he, at one point in the movie, after he tries to tell his parents and his parents don't believe him, the police officer, Mackey, comes over, and Davey had seen a kid over at his house that
Yeah.
before he went missing, which is the whole thing that kicks this off in the first place.
Yeah.
And Mackey said that was his nephew. And Davey said, well, do you think you can call him and let me know? And so I can hear him and he can tell. He calls a number. He says, oh, he's not picking up. Mackey goes away. And then he redials or he operators the number and to figure out what was the number that they do dial. And he was dialing his own phone number.
Yeah. Yeah, Tommy
Like
was
smart.
like a smart, like conspiracy theorist type kid. If you looked at his room, he had like photos of UFOs and all this stuff.
And speaking of like him as a conspiracy theorist, you always have like this is a classic, setup of character tropes.
Yeah.
You have the quote unquote like tough guy bad boy who's usually wearing like a leather jacket, probably listen to a lot of metal. You got the nerd. You got the pudgy, funny friend, and then you have our protagonist, who's usually the more normal of all of them.
Yeah.
Doesn't really have a personality other than he's just kind of like a normal kid. Well, I guess he gave him conspiracy theories, but
Yeah.
which I mean, not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's
different. Yeah.
it's just a
trope. Yeah.
it's a trope. And yeah, the ending. I was a little pissed off that they killed Woody, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? At least it's different. At least that dude is out there.
He's
still
out there. Yeah. And I'm so happy they just left this movie alone, never made a sequel or anything.
It doesn't need one.
No.
It's-
Just leave it alone. We're good.
Because if they made a sequel, it would kind of defeat the purpose. Because the whole ending is supposed to be he's still out there. He could be anywhere and can attack at any time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I will say this: if he didn't get away, it would have made me upset.
Yeah.
Because it would have just fallen into the all right, dude. He's chasing them. Everybody knows somebody's going to save him at the last minute because he's screwing around and playing with his prey, basically. But it's like, no, apparently he knows exactly where to bring his victims because ain't nobody came by the entire time he was chasing them in those woods.
Yeah, he took him to like a remote island, little lake. So I was like,
So yeah, I'm just still thinking of how funny I thought it was made in the 80s, because just sitting here like, wow, this looks really nice for the 80s.
Yeah, you
Um,
can't even like call this like a slasher movie. Not watch it a couple times because you really only see one kill on screen.
yeah, so we can't really do kills of the movie,
Yeah, this
but
is more of like a suspense movie.
which is I still rate
Yeah.
suspense in the same vein
Yes.
as horror.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
so we can't really do a kill of the movie, but we can do our favorite scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
So, how about you start that off?
I'm gonna hark back to like the scene where he's helping to move the thing inside. After he mentions the photos, they're downstairs in the basement, and there's a thud on the wall. A little foreshadowing, because that's where
Yeah.
he keeps his victims is in the basement. And Mac's just like stupid heater, always making noise.
Also, what's really
It's in the
funny,
middle of summer.
I will say it's also really funny that they painted him to be so obviously a bad guy that I
Yeah.
thought it was going to be like, oh no, it really wasn't him. Because it was like he was so obviously like acting like a shady killer person. It was like, no, this dude is a shady killer.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, it's a wonder how he killed so many people and the police force doesn't find him. It's like,
Right.
and not only
Maybe
that,
he's like taking evidence from the scenes, but whatever.
maybe it's just easy. I guess easier
Yeah.
to kill people back in the 80s.
Yeah. I don't think they did DNA in the 80s, so
I think that came probably a little bit later. Or if they did
I
have
think
DNA,
that-
it wasn't as like,
I think DNA testing started to become a thing in like the early 90s.
which is probably why like so many like 80s and 70s killers were at large, because there wasn't anything linking them that we could
Yeah.
use.
Wear gloves so you don't leave fingerprints.
Yeah. It's hard for me to choose a particular scene that really stood out with me. I don't. I'm gonna go ahead and say I do like that this ended sad. I will say it frustrated me, the incompetence of the cops in the thing,
Yeah.
like I said, and how there was nobody like stationed outside of his house. And I was annoyed at the chase in the forest until it was revealed, no, he's gonna get away.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was just going to lead up to, and he gets rescued at the last minute.
Yeah.
So the fact that they let him get away is my favorite scene.
And then Tommy's left with nothing because he's stripped away from his friends. And then Nikki, the girl that lived next door, she moves away because her parents got divorced at the beginning of the summer. So he's literally left with like nothing after this.
It's like there's no like, and I'll always look back on that. Somebody's like, no, it was just a story of one really messed up summer.
Yeah.
it was
That's gonna leave Tommy looking behind his shoulder for the rest of his life.
the rest of his life. He is going to be sitting there, like always wondering, is this guy gonna come and get me?
Yeah, high school is gonna be miserable for this kid.
Like no matter what he does, like he will never be able to really enjoy anything anymore.
Yeah, and it's a small town, so word's gonna spread once they start school. They're like, "Oh, this is the guy that got Woody killed."
Yeah, this is the guy that
Yeah.
got Woody killed, and don't go over to that dude's house. There's a serial killer that's always going to be looking. Don't get close to that Davy kid. People
Yeah.
around him die.
He's marked for death. Yeah,
So, the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of appreciating it. So, when I said I had words, it was mostly because of the words are basically, I think that it started out, I was a little bit iffy on the kids,
yeah,
but then I warmed up to them. And this movie has enough going for it that it doesn't fall into too many cliches
no,
that so many would easily fall into. Like I said, I'm glad there were no bullies, because movies of these types always have like a
bully for the kids to overcome.
yeah. And I just like stories like I do. If kids are written right, I do like this kind of setting of them all like going on an adventure to do something. It's just I think there's just so many of them out there that are written poorly that a lot of the good ones get overlooked, and this was one of the better ones.
Yeah, so I mean, the story of this one's probably one of my favorites of movies I've just randomly stumbled across on Shudder. So Yeah.
You want to rate this?
okay, so technicals. I mean, I think it's pretty well shot, and they really didn't need much for effects in this movie.
No, because it's a very suspenseful movie, and that's
Yeah.
what it relies on, is the suspense of it.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I'd give it a 7.5, 7.5.
okay. Story?
Story, I want to give the story a 9 because I really enjoyed the story. Enjoyment, probably an 8. So a total of 24.5 out of 30.
All right.
pretty good ranking.
I think it's safe to say that at least for one of us, all of these movies are going to be somewhere in the 20s.
Yeah.
So with me, I agree with. I'm going to say the same with the technicals.
7.5.
7.5. It was very good shot, and you know what? I'll even bump it up to an 8.
Okay.
I'll bump it up to an 8 because I also liked the music of it. I thought the music was very subtle. It wasn't in your face with the 80s, which a lot of movies since love
They're
to
set
do
in the
that.
80s. Will force 80s music down your throat. Yeah.
Well, if you didn't tell me this was in the 80s, aside from a couple of like little clues like them mentioning like Gremlins coming out, this is pretty kind of timely. It could have taken place in the 90s
Yeah.
because it doesn't beat you over the head with the era. So I'll give it an 8 actually, just because it had the wherewithal to be restrained like that. Story, I'm gonna give it a 7.
Okay.
I will say that the ending won me over. The ending won me over because it kind of like sprinkled in that thing at the end where I thought, all right, we know where this is going, and it was like, no, he just wanted to kind of like screw with him right before he leaves town.
Yeah.
And like he killed his friend, he slit his Achilles, and he's like, I will never leave you. And then he runs off. So that's 7. You know, a lot of that is definitely, and the kids could have been a lot worse. So
Yeah.
so I'm gonna give that a good old 7. And overall enjoyment, I'm also gonna give a 7.
Okay.
Overall enjoyment, I'll give it a 7. It only frustrated me in scenes that I thought it was going to be going one way, but then it surprised me.
Yeah.
Because you've seen so many, there's a whole lot of these movies, and they all become formulaic. That it had those in there, but then it'll throw in something different.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
There were a couple of scenes, like I said, where I said the dialogue did seem a little bit like forced vulgarity, and we have to make sure that everybody knows that these kids, or whatever like that. But I think there were more good than bad.
Yeah.
So I say 8.77.
All right. So 22 for you, and then 24.5 for me.
Yeah,
Pretty high up there.
it's a good movie. I recommend it. Give it a watch. It had enough stuff in there that surprised me that I was pleasantly surprised.
Exactly. Yeah. And usually I don't like, more suspenseful movies with no killing happening. But no, this movie is really enjoyable. The characters are enjoyable to watch them go through this. Yeah.
I guess I think I rated it about this same score as Exorcist. So Summer of '84, just as good as The Exorcist.
Just as good, if not better.
If not better than The Exorcist. So is it my pick now?
It is your pick.
Oh, and this one was always going to be on my list, and it's one that I've been saying I wanted to review for a little bit, and one that's one of my favorite creature features of all time, and we're going to be reviewing Tremors.
All right, I'm excited.
I love Tremor. I
love Tremor. Yeah,
and I love Burt Gummer. Burt.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of my favorite creature movies, and I'm so happy that we're going to get the opportunity to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
I'm just happy that we're watching good movies this
right?
season. It's so much better than we're like, all right, and then next episode we're going to be reviewing I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. Right. Scores 10 on the Rotten Tomato meter. So let's see what we think. So yeah, Tremors will be our next review, and you're going to be watching the homework assignment I gave you, which is
you gave me. What did you give me?
I gave you Lake Mungo.
Lake Mungo, that's right. And then I gave you Gyeongjam Haunted Asylum.
Yeah, I have to make sure not to delete that from my... Get ready for me to text you a little bit later and go, what was it called again?
Yeah.
And you said that's the very first Korean found footage?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, well, it's actually kind of appropriate because so is Lake Mungo.
Is it found footage?
It's kind of documentary style.
Okay. Is it also a foreign film or no?
No. Well, I think it takes place in Australia, but
okay.
So there's no need for subtitles.
You're gonna need subtitles.
Oh, I kind of figured.
Unless you know Korean.
Unless I need. Oh well, I mean, I just need to brush up
on your Korean. Yeah,
brush up on my Korean. I used to be so fluent.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because when I said I had words, it was like 10 minutes, or it was like a minute after the movie was done. And then as I started talking about it more and thinking about it, I was like, actually, you know what? This is a better movie than I was thinking
Yeah.
as I was talking about it.
It's one of those good movies you could go back and think back on, like, actually, yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
You guys got me.
yes, and like I said, I enjoyed the restraint for them, for the era that it was in, and that it did some things different, which I'm always appreciative of.
Yeah, because they could have just easily had Mackie kill off all three friends except for protagonist.
I was just expecting him to like one of the officers to come by and or one of the friends to come by and get him at the last minute.
Yeah.
Like when he was chasing, I was like, no, he just wanted to mentally scar this kid before he leaves. He knows what he's doing. This dude knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
So he ain't gonna he might have gotten caught by this little kid, but he ain't going to jail because of this kid.
No, and as long as he's free, he's always going to be on this kid's mind.
So I say go see it. And yeah, if you want to go ahead and take us out there, man.
All right. Once again, thank you all for listening. Hope you guys have a great week.
Yeah, and thanks again for joining us on our season of Personal Favorites.
Peace.
See ya. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Body Bag Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave us a comment as to what you'd like to hear us review, or any horror movie topics you'd like to hear us rant and rave about.
And while you're at it, you can find us on Twitter at BodyBagPod and on Instagram at BodyBagPodcast.
Thanks, and we'll see you next time.